different languages. A developer communicates in C++, Python, and other programming languages, while a designer communicates in wireframes, mockups, and sketches. Their visions are different. Ideas and prototypes go back and forth, wasting time and money. This workflow is simply not efficient. But there is a way for designers and developers to speak the same language. Qt is a cross-platform software development framework. It allows designers to work with third-party graphic design software and import their designs into Qt, where they are brought to life with easy-to-use prototyping tools and QML code. That way, the developers can easily understand what the designers want to achieve and work on the application logic simultaneously. Qt allows you to rapidly prototype, iterate fast, and innovate more. With Qt's effective end-to-end workflow, you can bring your products to market faster. Now, you can really focus on creating the best user experiences. Whether you're creating mobile or desktop applications, embedded systems for automotive, automation, or medical devices, Qt runs everywhere with the same code base, allowing you to code once and create more. Finally, designers and developers can use the same tools and speak the same language. The future is written with Qt.
Okay, that was an exciting explainer video. Now we have Thomas and Vikas online. The live presentation. Thomas?
Yes, I will first introduce myself. Vikas will introduce himself a bit later. I'm Thomas Hartmann. I'm a senior software engineer. I'm leading the Qt Design Studio technical team, and I've been with the Qt company for 12 years now. So I joined in the Trolltech days. I started working on the Windows CE port. That was very technical. This was basically system engineering. And later I did also consultancy, and I worked on the Qt Quick Designer, which is the product that Qt Design Studio was born out of. I will give a brief overview about the vision for Qt Design Studio. And after that, Vikas will talk about the Photoshop bridge. And then we will give a demo about the workflow. And in the end, I will briefly talk about the roadmap. And after that, there will be a Q&A session. Okay, our vision for the Qt Design tooling. We believe that it's absolutely crucial that we improve the collaboration between designers and developers. And yeah, we do that through effective and lean workflows. And this allows rapid prototyping and fast iterations. And for this, we need common tools and a common language. In this case, the common language is QML, and the common tools are Qt Design Studio and Qt Creator. Yeah, in the past we already had Qt Creator, and some people might remember the Qt Quick Designer. We had basically Qt Creator for the C++ developers, and we have Qt Quick Designer with a design mode for front-end developers. This is where we come from. Okay, what are the key requirements for UI designers? That is prototyping, mockups, that's importing visuals, graphics, adding animations on top of that, and they preferably want to work with a Visivik mode. And this was the Qt Quick Designer. And on the other side, we have the C++ developer and potentially the QML developer. And there we have code editing, analyzing code, debugging, profiling, and on and so on. And for this all to work, we need round tripping. Right? There are round trips between the developer and the UI designer. Usually it comes from the direction of the UI designer towards the developer. So we have the visual designer who creates sketches, who creates interaction design, who creates files with Photoshop and Illustrator, and he changes files with the developer, right? And the developer, let's call him the front-end developer, he's implementing the UI according to the specs and according to the backend logic. And yes, he will deploy to the device and test things. and then create typically change requests from the designers if, for example, something is too slow or if a design doesn't work in practice, and so on. And then yeah, the changes are implemented and so on and so on. And then you repeat on that. So there are many pitfalls with that. So for example, in the prototypes, typically you don't have any notion of UI components, and they're not reusable. And then if you spend a lot of time to create specs and to implement according to specs, you create a lot of time to create style guides and so on. And especially animations are extremely challenging to design and develop this way. Yeah, and this all of this makes prototyping, validating, and iterating on designs very cumbersome and time-consuming. So, and we want to enhance that. And yeah, for this we created Qt Design Studio. And Qt Design Studio sits exactly on the organizational boundary between developers and the designers. And on the right side, you have the development, and on the left side, you have the UX design. So we have the visual designer on the left and the interaction designer. They work with Qt Design Studio and they iterate on their designs. And on the right, we have the front-end developer and the back-end developer that basically can have also a cycle with them in itself, where they connect the front end with the back end. And together they deploy and test. And on the left side, on the total left side, we have the Qt design tools to deploy, where basically we import from Photoshop and so on. And in the middle, we have Qt Design Studio that allows the interaction designer and the visual designer directly to talk to the front-end developer. And here we have a couple of key benefits, right? We can basically create a prototype, and we will show that later, literally in minutes out of Photoshop, and iterate on the fly. We can create the prototype with QML and then reuse these components in later prototypes. And we can save effort and time through that and auto-generate code, right? In the end, we have QML code, and that QML code then can be given to the front-end developer and connected to the back-end. And also we have tools for pixel-perfect animations. Yes, and now Vikas will take over. I'll be back with a demonstration after Vikas does his short introduction of the Photoshop bridge.
Hello, my name is Vikas, and I'm working as a senior software engineer with the Qt company from last 3 years. And about a year ago, I was pulled into this project, and I was working mostly on the Photoshop bridge, where we have this plugin which actually takes your PSD files and it generates the QML out of it directly. So the designers actually work with the Photoshop, and the terminology and the way of working is a bit different as compared to what the QML is. So if you see the PSDs, they are mostly organized into artboards, into groups, into layers. And these layers and all this stuff does not directly match one-to-one with the QML. So we needed a way to annotate this information in the PSD directly so that we can tell the plugin, the system, that, okay, we have some layers, please make QML out of it, and use this layer to create an item, use this layer to create a component, so that we have all of the user interface from PSD to the QML directly. What this plugin does is it annotates your layers, adds this extra metadata about how this layer will end up in the QML, how the assets will be generated, and it spits out the assets accordingly also. So you don't have to export your images and PNGs through some other workflow and then add it to the project. This is all done automatically. So if you look at the at the screen, you can see this Qt Bridge plugin where a layer is selected on the right-hand side, and you can see the respective properties are being shown in the plugin. So there are a few important properties that one has to assign to these layers so to have a really good KML out of it. I will go through these properties one by one, but one of the most important property is the export type, where you have to tell, okay, what this layer is. Is it a component? Is it a child? Or you just want to merge it back to its parent layer, or you don't want it to export or part of the KML? Then you say, okay, it's a skipped layer. So components, so first requirement to design to be able to use this plugin is that you have to design your user interface using artboards. So by default, each artboard is a component. When you export and import back in the Qt Design Studio, it will automatically create a component. But you can also tell a child layer that, okay, I want another component out of this child layer also. So this way, you can create components directly from at the content creation time. You can tell, you can reuse this component as well in the PSD, which Thomas will also explain in the demo. And every layer that you set as child becomes the children of the respective component. So export as is a very important property, even though there are some defaults that also play in there. And the default is artboards are always components, and their first level children are always child item, and everything beyond that is basically merged down to their parents. So there are some advanced properties also associated with each layer, and which Thomas will actually use it in the demo, and you will see. Okay, so first is the KML type. So by default, the KML generated out of this plugin is usually items, image items, text items, and stuff. But once in a while, you also want to provide your own custom type to any generated KML. So this is the time where you can select a layer and tell, okay, this layer is basically will morph into arc item or rectangle or a mouse area or something like that. And when you use custom KML types, there might be a case that you have also associated imports with this. You might have your custom plugins which defines your custom types. So these imports you can directly type in here, and when you export this stuff, the imports will be automatically added to your KML files. The next item is KML properties, and this is where you want to associate or give more properties to your generated KML. Like I have this arc item, this is my custom type, and I know there are some properties associated with this, and I want to define this property right in the asset content creation time. So I can add those KML properties right here, and the generated KML will have those properties right there. So there are two more properties called clip contents. It just clips the contents to its area, and there is one property called create alias. So what it does is, if my child item is down in the hierarchy, maybe 3 levels down, and I want to access this from the component, then you just make a checkbox here, and basically this whole item is exported as an alias. So there are some settings where you actually can tell, okay, the assets that are automatically created out of this plugin, at which scale they should be created and what should be the format of this. So you can have multiple formats generated at the single export. So I will give you a very short demo about this stuff, and then Thomas will take over, and he will give you a much integrated demo with Qt Design Studio. So here's the Photoshop. So you can see I have already installed the Qt bridge over here. Sorry, I will open a very simple example. So the Qt bridge is already installed, but if you want to know how to install it, there is the help button. You can click it and it will open the help right here, and you can see how to install this, and other associated help is also available. So you see this PSD, and after you install this Photoshop, there is one important step that you have to follow, and that's it to set up the remote connections in Photoshop so that your Qt bridge can access your PSD file and generate assets out of it. For that, you have to go to File, and oh, this is the Windows. The settings. 5 minutes, right? So you have to go to Edit menu. On Mac, it's a bit different. So you go to Preferences, and you go to Plugins. And here you see this Enable Remote Connection. This is very important. You have to enable this, and you have to give a password to your Photoshop server service. You can give any password, and whatever password you give here, you have to type in here. And after you do this, you can just test the connection by the connect button, and you can see, okay, the connection is successful because I have already done that. And you can see there is an export path also. By default, the files are exported just parallel to your PSD file, but you can change this. And these settings are actually stored into your PSD file. So if you move your PSD file across systems, so just make it sure that what path is there where the files are actually being exported. And this property I have already explained, like you can add multiple formats and scale settings. And there is one more new thing that is called sanitized document. This is, we are actually running the RC candidate of version 1.1. So there are new features into it. And one of the features is called sanitized document. So when you add your metadata about inside the PSD about QML metadata, like export type and properties and all that stuff, this is stored in the PSD file directly. For some reason, if you want to remove all that information, you have to click this button, Sanitize Document. It will remove all the Qt bridge related information from your PSD file. So once you are done, please remember to save the file. And once your document is sanitized, all information is gone. So you have to redo the stuff. So this is one more new feature. That's why it's in the settings, so that you don't do it accidentally. And so if you see this example here, I have some an artboard called call fail. So apparently this UI is created for a watch maybe. And you can see different layers inside this. Some are text layers, some are images, and you can also see the associated properties being changed in the Qt Bridge plugin. So yeah, if you see the QML ID, it's a bit cryptic, and this is done by purpose because QML ID should be unique. And if you don't assign a unique QML ID, the default QML ID is basically your layer ID and your document ID, and it's made a bit like that. So please assign nice QML IDs so that they are readable in your code. And once you hit export, your assets are being created, your metadata file is being written, which is actually used back in Qt Design Studio. I will go quickly through this. And to see this UI, I'll just create a new project, a quick application. Oh, I'll keep just untitled. And QDesign Studio will create an application for you. You go to resources and you will add a new resource. So this is the generated output of my PSD file. You just include the metadata and you hit import. So import is done. So have a quick view of this in the KMLC. So this is a typical workflow from that you go from PSD to QDesign Studio. And now I will give the stage to Thomas, who will actually give you a more realistic and workflow, and also talk about QDesign Studio features as well. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Now we will go on, hopefully with less technical problems. So I will now create a small demo. So for now, let's just open an empty project again in QDesign Studio. Let's assume this is a mobile form factor, but then we go back to Photoshop. And I prepared another document here in Photoshop. And yeah, this is basically a contact list, an easy contact list. And you see I have a main artboard called Flickable that contains a header bar, and then it contains here the Flickable. And you see that when you select the Flickable item down here, you see that it has the QML type filled in. So that means that in Photoshop already, I tell the exporter that this item should become a Flickable later. And inside that Flickable, I have a list content, which is this object here. And here we have the odd and even rows. And each odd and even row is again annotated to be an even rows or odd rows item, which is defined here. This way we can already have reusable components defined in Photoshop, and once we import that to QML, the whole structure is preserved. So let's go back to the Qt Quick Design Studio. So just let's talk very shortly about this. We have an item library on the left. We will not use that today. We have a property editor on the right. We will use that. And we have a navigator, and we have a project navigator. And now I will import. First, I have to export the project, of course. I've got that. So let's check where we export that to. That looks good. Then I press the export button, and this will take a while. Right? Yes. And we can go back. So we have the property editor here, and we have a state editor here on the bottom. And now I want to import that. So here we have the resources tab. So let's check if the export is finished. It is finished. And then we can click here safely. Select the folder export this time. We select the metadata. We now can make a couple of settings here. One thing that I will talk today about is the merge feature. For now, we don't merge anything because this is the initial import. We import and we wait a bit. And it's imported and turned to QML. And let me close this again. And we look at the project browser and go to the main screen. And here you have the main screen as designed in Photoshop. And actually all the structure was preserved. Most importantly is that also the Flickable is still there. And I will now change the content height of the Flickable to some proper value. And I also will change the behavior. And I will also save that. And now I can run that in the live preview. And now already I have this running basically as a application kind of. So that's really just minutes of work to have a Flickable working. And now I want to add a bit more structure. And for that, I will open the odd rows. This was the odd rows of the Flickable, one of the items. And I will select the name here. And first, I will anchor that to the left and to the right. And then I will set the right margin to 4. And now I do something more interesting. I say export this property as alias. And now if I select the root item, you see that it was exported as an alias. And I will give this a better name. I will just call it name. And that means now from the outside, we can access this text label under the property name. And I will do the same for this thing. Again, I layout it because I have to layout it, because without layouts, it would not adjust to the content when it's changed. And this we call company. Okay, and we save that. And now I will open the list content, which was using that. You see that here. This is the list content thing. And here you see that now all the odd rows have these two properties I added. And now let's change, for example, the name to Vikas Pachda. See, that works. And yeah, he also works for the Qt company. Now he works for the Qt company too. And here I enter my name. And now you can basically easily add some more structure to it without actually touching the original component. And also I will show later that you could now also merge an updated Photoshop into this, and all these changes would be preserved. Now let's go back to the main screen. So you see here that everything is like I changed it. Now I want to add two states. One state I call collapsed, and another one I call extended. Yes, like that. And in the collapse state, I want to make this thing on the top a bit smaller, the header block. I will just move that thing up a bit. Then I will select the context element. We'll also move that up a bit and make it smaller by changing the scaling a bit to, let's say, 0.4. Okay. Now if you move back and forth of these two states, you see that this thing collapses now in the collapse state. And here I set a when condition. So I say flickable, which is the flickable of this thing. Content Y. See if I get that right the first time. Bigger than 100. And I changed that as a when condition for that state. Now I set the when condition for the other state. I turn the sign here around. And now I run that again in the live preview. And now let's try that out. And as you see, when I scroll up by 100 pixels, it's collapsed. And now you get this standard behavior from websites these days. Okay, that's nice. And now I want to show something more. And we can now go back to the Photoshop. And for example, we select this context thing here and change the color a bit of the text label. Where is that? This is this text item that has a color white here. We give that a dark gray. Okay, and now let's go in here, and there's the organization text label. And for some reason, we want to change the text height a bit to, let's say, 18. See, this now became bigger. And I will export this again. You have to wait a bit. And then later I will import that, and you will see that now it will ask me whether I want to override the original. I want to do that. And then when I import it later, you will see that all the changes I did to my document are preserved. So let's do that. We go back to the Design Studio. Oops. Is it here? And I again go to Add New Resources. I again import my exported folder, and this time I turn on the merging. I press import, and now it merges basically the Photoshop with the existing stuff. And we annotate the QML in a way that we know what came from Photoshop and what not. So now I reload it. And what you see now is that everything is still there. Like this is still Vikas, it overrode that. All the structure I added is still there, but it did change the font size here, and it did change the color for the context. And this way you can basically work on your QML, add functionality, while you can still work also on the design and yeah, iterate in parallel basically and merge your updates from Photoshop. So that's a very powerful concept, of course. Of course, there are also limitations. So if you will do structural changes to the structure of the QML, especially if you delete items that are used and so on, then it will break, of course. But if you only add stuff in Qt Design Studio and Photoshop, it will continue to work. If you don't do structural changes, it will work. If you change properties, it will work. And that's already very, very powerful, right? You can already do a lot of stuff in the Design Studio, while basically the Photoshop is still a mutable document where you can still do changes. Yes, just to wrap this up a bit. So Qt Design Studio is basically a WYSIWYG editor that allows also to define functionality, as you just saw, and that allows to easily prototype. What we didn't show today is that the live preview also runs on, for example, Bluetooth Qt devices, on an iMac 6, on embedded hardware. This means you can validate your designs early on real hardware. You can easily import things from Photoshop. You can use the same code with adjustments, of course, everywhere on desktop, embedded, mobile. And this way, yeah, you avoid costs. You lower your costs. You become more agile. You can innovate faster, and you can also improve the quality a lot of your product. So the product itself, Qt Design Studio, was also developed in a similar approach. You see basically the roadmap here. We had a kickoff in 2017. We had last year the release of Qt Design Studio 1.0, and we are now in the process of releasing Design Studio 1.1. So what you just saw was the release candidate, basically, and we hope to release that more or less next week. And the main feature that was introduced with, or will be introduced with, for Qt Design Studio 1.1 will be the merging that I just showed, but there were also many other improvements, especially small improvements to the custom shapes that we provide, lots of small bug fixes, the timeline got a bit more powerful, and so on and so on. For the future, the main part we concentrate on is supporting more Qt bridges, especially sketch support. We also want to build and help building a design ecosystem around the tool. And we want to integrate more with Qt 3D Studio, our 3D offering. And what we also heavily look into is also how to manage basically assets in general, potentially adding Git support with an intuitive workflow. There's a lot of research ongoing. We want to have annotations. And of course, we are happy about any customer feedback we get. So feel free to propose new features on our bug tracker. And we also look into how to manage state, how to manage UI flow in general, and yeah, to provide some of the functionality that you are used to from typical prototyping applications, but having that also in a fidelity that you can reuse it for the real product, right? Because this is part of the value proposition here, that everything you do with Qt Design Studio can be a prototype, but potentially it can also be part of the product. Like it's the same like if you would develop in C++, yes, you might do a prototype and you might throw away some of the code, but you don't have to, because the final product also will be in C++. And this is the same thing here, right? Even if you prototype things, certain things will stay the same from the prototype to the final product. And you will just replace things where it's required because you want to add more architecture to it, because you want to increase the quality and so on. Yeah, and then I want to say thank you. If you want to learn more, you can, of course, look on our website. Feel free to contact me if you have questions. And of course, download Qt Design Studio and try it out. The beta is already available of Qt Design Studio 1.1. And of course, there's also Qt Design Studio 1.0. And hopefully next week, we will have Qt Design Studio 1.1. So thank you. So now we are here. Questions and answers. Oh yes, there have been quite a lot of questions. Yeah, the first question is about GIMP. At this point in time, there are no plans for GIMP, but we are thinking about open sourcing the infrastructure for the import, which would make it possible for others to provide such a plugin, and also for potentially for other tools, because there are so many tools out there that we will not be able to support all of them. Right now, we concentrate on Sketch, and then we have to really decide on what to support next. Most likely, there will be some kind of support for Illustrator. Yes, but we will be happy to accept contributions for other tools. Okay.
It's again the GIMP.
Yeah.
And the video completion.
I think, yes, the plan was to record this, and you can watch it then afterwards.
And regarding import from Photoshop to QDesign, I wonder if there is an update in Photoshop and form also changed in QDesign. How does this changes reconcile?
Yes, this is what I talked about in the merging, right? If the changes are on a property level, we will merge them. At the moment, all properties of Photoshop have precedence, but we are thinking about making this a bit more sophisticated. Also, we know that a lot of property can only be changed on the QtDesign Studio side, and this makes it easy to decide that. And also, if you add items on both sides, this will also work. Even ID changes work because we annotate, at least to some degree. To be careful here, because we annotate the QML with unique IDs, so we can track ID changes. Yes, and I think you saw that it already works to some pretty extended degree.
So the next question is about whether, so the current workflow is from Photoshop to QtDesign Studio. So next question is like whether we can move stuff from QtDesign Studio to Photoshop. So as of now, there is no functionality of this, but we discussed this feature, and but it's not materialized so far. But in the future, it might happen that we move some annotations from QtDesign Studio to Photoshop, maybe. So as of now, the feature is not there. And the next question is whether we support the Illustrator file in the QtDesign Studio. So as of now, if you are designing your vector graphics in the Illustrator, you can use it as a smart object and use it in the Photoshop, and then you can export it. But there is no direct support from Illustrator to QtDesign Studio.
Yes, but we will think at least about integrating vector graphics and especially Illustrator a bit more closely. We are thinking about things like having that copy and paste becomes possible, that you can select an item in Illustrator, copy it, immediately paste it in the QtDesign Studio as a shape and these kind of things.
Can we use inputting? No, okay.
Yeah, Inkscape also was mentioned a couple of times. Again, we hope we will be able to open source the importing infrastructure, and then a couple of others bridges will turn up in time. Yes, the question is about open sourcing. That's a big topic. I cannot give a too detailed answer at this point in time. But what I can tell is that most of the source is actually open source as part of Qt Creator, including even the timeline. It's just very small parts, like for example, at this point in time, the importer still, which are not open source. Most likely the Photoshop exporter will never become open source. These are things that are heavily discussed at the moment.
The next question is about whether the output that's generated from the Photoshop import, whether it's memory performant, time performant. So the answer would be it will not be worse. So as of now, we have tried to make this generation of QML as slim as we can, not adding extra stuff into it. So yeah, so it will not be like a very heavy QML that's generated out of it. So in the examples you can see it's mostly items and mostly images and stuff like that. So,
yes. So generally we try with everything we do in QtDesign Studio to create proper declarative QML that performs well. For example, I recreated the embedded bike demo with the QtDesign Studio, and the performance was more or less the same than a handwritten one. Why is that? Because we reuse the same items. We use the same items as handwritten Qt. That basically means we have the same performance. We just use Qt in a very natural way. Also, if you use the designer, then of course it might be possible that you create too many items, too many textures in the end. So, but even that you can fix with merging more layers on the Photoshop side and so on. So it's really high level at that. It's not like we don't really generate code, right? We just generate a DOM, and this DOM is fast if Qt is fast.
The next question is about the merge functionality and how do we tackle the conflicts that come out of this merge process?
Yes, for now, we are a bit aggressively there and say Photoshop has precedence, but for the future, we will definitely improve the UI. So you will be able to merge on a file-by-file base and potentially even on a node-by-node base, and basically, yeah, put a simple UI on top that basically serves as a simple merge tool.
So next question is whether the Qt Creator will convert itself to Qt Design Studio when updated. And no, the Qt Creator and Qt Design Studio is two separate products.
Yes. Qt Creator is a C++ IDE that contains Qt Quick Designer, and that will stay like it is. So everybody who likes that setup, it's totally fine to continue with that setup. Qt Design Studio is a separate tool targeted for less technical people that don't know about C++. And there will be two different tools in the future, and this will not change. Okay.
So that's all that questions there are. If there are any more questions, you can type it right now, or you can contact us
via email
or bug
forums, bug reports. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I hope you liked the presentation despite the technical issues we had in the beginning. And yes, you can just try it out, download it, and yeah, thank you for the participation. It was, yeah. Thank you for your time.
If anyone else has any more questions or have any comments in the chat box,
there's another one. Yes, there's a question. Yes, actually, I forgot to tell that. Qt Design Studio 1.1 will also be available for Linux. You can also already try out the beta. So Linux is now also supported, because this was not supported with 1.0, but that is clear yes here. And then there's a question if we can also use that with legacy code that was developed with Qt Creator. In principle, yes. So if you have a legacy project and you use Qt Quick Designer before, there's nothing stopping you from now using Qt Design Studio. One thing you have to keep in mind is that if you have handwritten QML, this might not be something that really works out of the box with the visual tooling. There are some limitations, but you can just basically continue with that project and add new files that are now done with the Design Studio and so on. So yes, you can also start with using Qt Design Studio with legacy projects. Okay.
Any more questions? So I think that's it.
Yes.